Hi, welcome to the Learning Corner with Scott and Stacie.
I'm Scott.
And I'm Stacie. And today we're going to talk a little bit about buying into your business. And really what we mean by that is, when do you make the decision to go from it being a side hustle to actually going into business and that being your full-time business? So this is something really Scott knows quite a bit about, and he's really the expert on it. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, a long time ago, actually, while I was going to college, I decided that I was going to start a roofing company. And it almost happened on a whim. And at that point, I wasn't giving up a career because it was during the summertime that I was going to be roofing. Mm-hmm. But when you're thinking about jumping out of your hobby into starting a business that is going to be your long-term business, I think probably the most important thing to know is that the business you're engaging in has long-term viability.
And long-term meaning like a year, 3 years? When you say long-term viability, what are you talking about?
Well, I can see a job where you might jump into it knowing that you've got 2 years to make hay while the sun's shining, if you will, mm-hmm. and you're going to be in and you're going to be out of that in 2 years because of a unique opportunity. But that's probably not the case for most people. Mm-hmm. For most people, I would advise them that this needs to be something that you can see yourself doing for the next 30 years. And you're going to be filling a need that customers will have for the next 30 years until you retire.
Okay. And throw an example that I'm thinking about, maybe.
Sure.
I'm sure there's a lot of folks who do auto mechanic work on the sides, nights and weekends. Okay. When do they decide they want to quit their full-time job and maybe open up their own auto mechanic shop?
I think that's a great example. And the first point is making sure that that's going to be a long-term viable business. Mm-hmm. And obviously, 30 years from now, people are still going to have some sort of transportation that is going to need to be worked on. We all thought by our age that we thought we'd be driving flying cars by this point, and we're still not. It is evolving rapidly, but that's a great long-term opportunity, in my opinion.
Okay. And so if I'm going to do this for a long time, I'm assuming one of the things that you're going to recommend is that you kind of like what you're doing. You enjoy it.
Oh, sure. I would imagine that. I would think you have to have a passion for that because you're looking at a lot of hours and a lot of frustrations and a massive learning curve. A lot of people who are a technician decide that they want to own a business, and they think that they're going to continue being the technician, not realizing that there's bookkeeping that's going to take up a major part of your time. There's taxes that you have to know about. There's forming a business entity. There's payroll if you get to the point where you have employees. There's marketing. There's insurance. There's somebody's got to sweep the shop out. And, so there's all kinds of things that go into it.
So are there any resources that you can think of that would be good for someone who's thinking about doing that?
Yeah, over the course of these videos, I think that we'll talk about several resources that are available to people. And I think in next week's episode, we're going to talk a lot about the book by Michael Gerber, The E-Myth. And I think it's an awesome book, but I'd like to save that for next week.
Okay.
The resource that I want to talk about today is going to be Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, which was published a long time ago and is still every bit as viable today as it was then. Yep.
Well, that kind of leads to our next point that we kind of want to talk a little bit about is if you're thinking about moving from your side hustle into a full-time operation and a full-time business, who do you talk to? Who do you go to? Who do you seek out for advice? Is there anyone, who do you Google? To kind of get some information from if you're wanting to do this. And maybe the better question is, who do you not go to?
That's probably the best way to start that conversation is who do you not talk to? It's very easy to go to your friends, your family members. And I think that you need to follow Dave Ramsey's advice when he's talking about financial matters is you don't take financial advice from broke people, right?
That makes sense.
It does. It makes tremendous sense to me. And I've been guilty of it. I've talked to people seeking advice from people who have have opinions but no real experience in the areas that you're looking to talk to.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that you identify people who currently own their own small business. And if you can even get pickier than that, I want you to find people who own their own small business and you're seeing success. You're seeing them progress along the path towards whatever they define as success. For some people, success is, with the automotive example, I want to work out of my garage and I want to work 30 hours a week for the rest of my life and take care of a very select group of clients and not be stressed or pressured.
Nothing wrong with
my
that.
family. Nothing wrong with that at all. But the next mechanic may say, hey, I want to be the next Lamb's Automotive and I want to have 13 different shops across Austin and eventually want to move up to Dallas as well. So depending on what you have as a vision for your company, you want to seek out people that are marching along the path that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And
it doesn't have to be the same industry. I would recommend that you find somebody in the same industry, but also a couple of people that are doing something else.
That kind of reminds me a little bit of that Mastermind group about finding folks that are in that same area just to visit with and to get to know and kind of glean some of that information from them.
Absolutely.
I know as we've grown, we've reached out to a lot of other people, but also I found that small business folks that are successful love talking business a lot of times. And so when you reach out to them, a lot of times you'll find that they want to talk to you about it because they get excited to see other people grow and do well.
Absolutely.
So,
and people's favorite topic to talk about is themselves.
Sure.
So if you can ask somebody about their business and what they're doing that has made them successful, people will line up to talk to you and give you that information.
Yeah. One more point I'd like to add to that is when you seek out that information, follow it. A lot of times, if you go and ask for people's advice, a lot of times it's hard work. It's not easy, but if you want to be successful and successful people give you advice, it's a good idea to take some of it because otherwise you keep going back and after a while they're going to say, you know what? I'm not going to keep giving you advice if you're not going to do the work for it.
Absolutely.
So,
it's human nature to discard the advice that you didn't want to hear. And so one of the best phrases I've ever heard is, what are you pretending not to know? And it kind of is applicable right there because when I hear advice, hey, Scott, you really should be doing this. Oh, that's hard.
Yeah.
I don't really want to go there. And so it's easy to put that on the back shelf when in reality, you ought to buckle down and fight your way through that and accomplish that when that's the advice that you're given.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really, this whole concept that we're talking about is really what I wanted to talk about with Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and it's the mastermind concept. Yeah. So you really want to have a diverse set of individuals that you call your mastermind group. And so it's sound advice to have a banker in that group if you can get there. And I remember getting that advice when I was 20 years old and starting my business. And I'm like, what banker would ever talk to me? And so probably get away from the big banks and find a small bank, probably not I hate to say not a credit union, but probably not a credit union, but a small business bank would have somebody in there that would be willing to tuck you under their wing and be willing to give you good counsel. I would think somebody in your business, somebody, a business coach type person, but in the early days you probably you need to weigh whether you can afford to pay a business coach. So
one of my questions I have is about affording to jump out, so we'll cover that next.
Okay. I would say that eventually you're going to want somebody who understands insurance.
Yes.
And an insurance agent for sure
absolutely
they'll probably be trying to earn your business, and there's no shame in that.
Nope.
But I think that you're smart to get somebody who understands business insurance to start giving you a little bit of advice and to start teaching you the things that you need to know, because there's a wide range of topics that you now need to be an expert on besides just being the mechanic.
Yeah. Well, and that sounds a little overwhelming at first of, oh my gosh, I've got to go find all these people. But what I have found is, my insurance agent introduces me to a banker, or my banker introduces me into someone as they know someone who is like-minded or has a business like this. And so you only really need one or two of those before the doors open. And as long as you let folks know, hey, I'm kind of looking for somebody to bounce some ideas off of, people are always willing to say, yeah, go talk to this person over here. Go talk to that person. Or I recommend here. They enjoy doing that. So not as overwhelming as it sometimes sounds.
Yeah. And we said we were going to talk about people not to talk to, but we kind of bounced past that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So it's very tempting to talk to your brother. It's tempting to talk to your best friend. It's tempting to talk to the guy that you work with that has the same job that you have, or the lady that has the same job that you have currently. And if you've got to realize that those people probably have different values than you do and different aspirations.
Yeah, different visions.
Yes, yes. And so I found a lot of people telling me, oh, you shouldn't do that. You should have a job working for somebody else because it's comfortable and it's stable. And there's some value in that counsel.
Sure.
But if I'm the type of person that's not meant to work for somebody else, I'll tell you, I've got a vision for the next business and the next business and the next business. I've got 14 of them on the drawing table right now. So me working for somebody long-term is probably not a great solution. And in the early days, you have to work for somebody, almost have to work for somebody else in order to gain that experience that you need. But staying there long-term wasn't for me. So don't get counsel, like you said, don't get counsel from broke people on financial topics. If somebody has never run a business, somebody doesn't have a business, I don't think that's the best place for you to be getting your advice.
Or if someone has not been successful in the business, I think I would add that too.
Sure.
Don't go seek out counsel for someone who, it's great to learn lessons learned, great to say kind of what not to do. But you want to make sure and seek out folks that are successful at doing it to kind of help you be successful along the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
My career has been in the building trades.
Yep.
And I can show you countless people who took that leap and became an independent contractor, right? And now they're 30 years later and they're still one person operating out of one truck, and they're tired and their bodies broke down and they don't have a lot to show for the 30 years that they've put into it. And I run into a lot of people that are bitter about that.
Yeah.
And that's not the type of person that you want to be getting your advice from about, unless they're saying, hey, don't do what I did.
Right.
That's got some value to it.
Right.
But if they're saying, hey, do it just like I did and end up bitter and angry like I am, that wouldn't be where you want to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So, let's get down to brass tacks, as a lot of people say, and let's talk about the money of it. As someone who's married to an entrepreneur and someone who is somewhat risk averse and I like security, one of the things that probably most people are concerned about is the financial side of it. Going from a regular paycheck that someone else is responsible to make sure there's money's in the bank, to it being on your shoulders to make sure the money's in the bank. And there's making sure the money's in the bank for your paycheck, but also when you start hiring employees to make sure the money's in the bank for those. So what financial advice would you give to people that are wanting to move from their current job they're at now to opening up their own business or taking that side hustle to the next level?
Okay. Well, the first thing I would say is to work your primary job and do your side hustle and start making money in that side hustle. Okay. And if you are dedicated, if you have that passion that we spoke about, you are going to start bringing customers in. Okay. And what I think that you've got to do is you've got to be able to start quantifying what that income is that's coming in from that side hustle. And before you would even dream of leaving your primary job, I would think that you would want to be able to replace 75% of that income.
Okay.
Okay. And that might take you 3 months. That might take you 4 years.
Yeah.
I don't know. But while you've got your primary income coming in and now you've got this additional income, you've basically given yourself a 75% raise. And that might mean you're working 80-hour weeks. It very likely will mean you're working 80-hour weeks, right? But if you take that 75% and you can't, I would recommend that you don't live on that money. I would recommend that you are either banking that for when you go out on your own, or that you are investing that back into the company. Okay. So if you're going to be a if you're going to go into the construction trades, that you're buying the tools that you need in order to jump out on your own, and that you're buying the vehicle that you're going to use for the first 3 years of your business. Or if you're going to become a printer, that maybe you're buying a piece of printing equipment that you're going to use.
Okay, my thought is I don't have a whole lot of patience. I want to move quickly on things, and so the thought of earning 75% more of my income is very daunting and could be several years. And so what if I don't want to wait that long? What if I'm really ready to make that step? Any thoughts or any recommendations on how to survive those first couple of years when I do that?
Yeah, the best way to do that is to be a 2-income household, and to have an income. If one person can provide an income that your household can live on, then it makes it a whole lot easier for the second person to stop doing their primary business or the job and jump into the side hustle full time. It's really tough for most people to quit a job, be the sole provider for a household, and go make enough money to continue providing for the household and to support the business.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things that I've seen is that people start a new business and you start acquiring customers, and you got that passion and people are drawn to that, right? And you're bringing in customers and you're making money. Okay, there's money there, and you might be making, in your first month, you might make a $3,000 gross profit, gross margin, right? Okay, but then you've got some expenses that have to come out of that. Your insurance has to come out of that, and your gas and things like that have to come out of that money. Okay, but meanwhile, back home, it takes you, if you're living frugally, maybe it takes $2,500 or $3,000 a month to pay the mortgage and put food on the table. Right? And so what generally happens to small businesses is they're making some profit. It might be making $1,000 net profit in the month, but you've got to have $3,000 a month at home to survive. And so what people do is that you have to survive, right? And so what you do is you take $3,000 out of your business. Well, it only made $1,000, and so now you got a $2,000 deficit. And what normally happens is that is sucked up by borrowing. If you had an oil change shop, you have an account with your supplier, and so what you do is that your cushion is, you got a $10,000 line of credit over there, and so what you do is you, instead of paying off last month's materials, you pay a little bit of last month's materials and you buy some more, right? And that allows you to take the money you were going to spend on oil filters, and now you're going to spend that on your electric bill and on your rent. Then 2 or 3 months later, now boom, your credit limit is filled up and you got no more cushion. And so then that's when businesses go out of business, is when the debt payment catches up.
So I think I know with us, it helped a lot to grow the business is having a second income. So we could use the gross margin and the net profit of the business to put back into the business to continue to have it to grow.
Yes, and that primary thing, when we decided to grow the business, we were able to live on your income. And we actually made our first hire by taking my salary and cutting it to zero. And hiring a person and giving them that salary so that they could feed their household. And now we had 2 people working with only the expense of 1, which is a great way to begin growing that business.
So one of the things I remember back in those days, when we made this leap and when we started doing this, is number of hours that had to be put in. Is this a 40-hour-a-week job?
No. If you want to be old and bitter after 30 years, what you have to commit to is, I think, 70 and 80-hour weeks in the early days, because it just takes more work. You have to have money to go home with you, and you have to have money to invest back in the business. You can start a business on your dining room table, but if it's going to be a large business, eventually it has to be able to move out of your dining room and into some commercial space.
I think it's fair to say a lot of what we've seen, you just can't do that on 40 hours a week.
No.
It's weekends and nights. And so I think that gets back to what we talked about, having that passion and that desire and that love of doing that, so that you gotta love it. And so, for us, yeah, we love roofing, but our passion is helping others and helping our employees and seeing our employees grow. So we're in business. We happen to sell shingles,
Right.
But we're really in the business of business. And so, but you have to have a passion for it because it does take a lot of time.
I'm sorry. What's the movie that line's from? I'm in the business of doing business.
Somebody's going to have to write in and tell us that because I don't know offhand.
Okay. Brewster's Millions.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Late 80s?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
long time ago.
So yes. So we are in business. We happen to sell shingles. We now happen to sell air conditioners.
Yep.
Not too far in the distant future, we will happen to sell something else.
Yep.
So, but in those early days, and even still, we don't cut our hours. We're not 40-hour-a-week people typically.
No.
So
yeah.
But as we get older and move into our 50s.
Well, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit more in future episodes, talking about your staffing. I think we'll talk about that next even. How do you staff up? And because let's face it, as we get older, you can't be on roofs all the time. You need to have somebody else be able to handle that job.
Yes.
So, but at the same time, you still need an income. So how do we manage that? So anyway, well, we hope you enjoyed this. This is our first episode. We plan on having many more, just to kind of throw out some little tidbits of things that we've learned over time. So thank you for joining us, and watch for the next ones of the Learning Corner with Scott and Stacie Keller.
Thank you.